Welcome to chapter 29, and with it, the end of inflectional morphology. We are meeting the last non-finite verbal form that we haven't met yet, if you exclude a negative nominalization, which we're going to meet at a later point, but that's more derivational than inflectional. And the missing form that we had was the negative participle in deme, which also can be used adnominally. We'll see that in a moment. So basically, you attach this deme, deme suffix with the vowel harmonically appropriate form to the verbal stem, and if necessary, as per usual, the stem is simplified. And yeah, we're going to look at the exact meaning of it in a moment. But it can then also be attached to nominal stem to create so-called privative adjectives. Like adjectives denoting the absence, the lack of something, much like less is used in English. So like placeless, fireless, rainless, or whatnot. So about the usage, the negative participle can be used as an attribute, as is usual with participles. So it can be like a tunem deme yilme, an unlearned language, a language that has not been learned. Ujtemo siret, an unseen picture, a picture that has not been seen. Lütdeme saltak, a fearless soldier, a soldier that does not fear. Hey, wait a minute, there's a bit of a difference between these two. Ujash is a transitive verb, and Ujtemo was somebody that was not seen in this context, and Ludash is an intransitive verb, and Lütdeme here is somebody who does not fear. So basically, this the whole voice dimension, active passive, is completely lost in this with this participle. It can be active or passive depending on context, and it's just, I mean, since Ludash is an intransitive verb, it's got to be an active reading here, that it is a soldier that does not fear. But if we have like Ujtemo suret, well, it could be like it's a picture that has not seen. But if I had an Ujtemo, like an Ujtemo ideme, an unseen picture, an unseen person, is it an unseen person or is it per unseen person? Well, we need context then to know which one it is. That is one thing that I wanted to point out from this example, and the other one is the last one. This combination of an infinitive with this negative participle, with the negative participle of liash, to be, but also to be possible. This is very common because this is the counterpart to like English unable. Like emlash to cure, emlash lideme incurable. Ishtash to do, ishtash lideme undoable. Like ludash to read, Ludash lideme unreadable, etc. So you will be meeting that combination quite a bit. Yeah, here are some more usage examples where it's being used as an attribute. It can also be used as a predicate, as was the case with all the other participles. So achi pesh lüteme ilye, father, my father was very fearless. He was very unfearing or so. It's not really surprising in my opinion, because I mean, participles are prototypically used as adjectives, and this is prototypical adjectival stuff that we're seeing here. We can also, by conversion, use the negative participle as nouns. So this is the same process by which, for example, lucho, which originally means reading, becomes reader, the person that reads. Tunukdosho, teaching, becomes teacher, etc. A person or a thing that does something, and in this case, a person or a thing that does not do something. So if I say like lütdemem tunya yarata, it's like the word loves the fearless, the person that does not fear. Palademe here is an unknown, but like an unknown person, a person one doesn't know. Or umelash lideme, in this case, like the incomprehensible, that cannot be understood. It is then, it can also be just used as something incomprehensible, that which is not understood, the incomprehensible, so to say. But we can also use the participle, as was the case with the passive participle and the future necessitive participle, but not with the active participle. We can use it as a verbal noun that refers to the action as a whole, or in this case, an absence of an action of a whole. like here we talk about the manager who's calling Anya to the office because the manager saw that Anyan Pasham Ishtedemijim Ujan, seeing Anya's work not doing of. So this is in just referring to the not doing of work as a whole, or because of not thinking, like especially with postpositions, you will oftentimes have the passive participle, and if needed by government with case marking, like in this case, because Kara wants the dative. Due to not thinking, we came into a difficult situation. Yeah, and finally, the privative usage of it's denominal. This is a mistake in the slides. I need to fix it. The privative usage based on nominal stem is less without having something. Like pashadame, okay, here we have unemployed, but literally it's just workless. Muchashtame, endless, an endlessly long queue. Chinchadame is like the eye-less or so. Yoldemo is the legless and such. Okay, so it's quite productive in this sense. Next grammar point, we're going to have a little look at what non-finite verbal forms can be used in the subject position of clause, and that can be the infinitive, especially if we are talking about, if we're in situations where you in English would use the to infinitive. To ask questions, it is not good to ask questions about this. Like to drive somebody away is easy, literally quick. To get somebody to come is difficult. Yeah, this equivalency doesn't always 100% work because like here in English, kayashna laskaliyesh, are going home will be comfortable. Like to go, it would be something like to go home is going to be comfortable for us in this case. Yeah, so it can be the infinitive. It can also be a participle, primarily the passive participle, but also the other ones. And this is especially in cases where in English we use an ing infinitive. Mariel Respublikische cum ania lime malam motkoch kelsen. So this cum ania lime, the being in the Mari Republic for 3 weeks, appealed to me a lot. So I liked being in the Mari Republic for 3 weeks. To get oile metat, like oilemo from oilash, oilemo, passive participle, oilemet. You're saying like this at this additive particle, also like also how you said or that you talked engraved itself in my memory. So you talking like this, again, an ing form works here. Yeah, and it doesn't work in this one, but here with the negation, like not knowing foreign languages with a negative participle put many obstacles in my life. Or you not finishing university, what is it connected with? So yeah, participles. And the third option that we have are nominalizations with the ending mash, where here, if we're using the mash forms, this is always something more abstract. In the previous two things, we were looking at concrete things like you being in Mariel for 3 weeks. But here we're talking about like skiing as an abstract concept helps your you to be healthy. But if you're talking about like spending 3 weeks in Mariel skiing was really good for my health, then you'd go back and use the passive participle instead. Last grammar point that we have in this chapter are relative clauses and local clauses. So we now know all the participles, and we have, as we have discussed, participles are a very common strategy to create equivalencies to relative clauses where we have them in English. So if we have like a word that was heard or a present that was bought, you would just say the heard word, the bought present. And I mean, we can, and in some cases we can do this in English too, but we can just, since we have a much larger inventory of participles in Mari and a much wider range of usage situations for them, the range of situations where it works is wider. Like a rashende de meyodish, a matter which has not been clarified, an unclarified matter and such. Okay, but this is one strategy. There is also another strategy which Mars will have very mixed feelings about this last one, and that is using kudo as a relative pronoun. Kudo, which originally meant which, like in as a question word, which one do you want to get? It can also be used as a relative pronoun. This is something that was especially bolstered in 1950s, when it was actually the language politics of the time was that one would encourage the usage of Russian-like syntax in minority languages of the Soviet Union. And since Russian uses relative pronouns in relative clauses with katori, the idea was, well, let's push the usage of kudo as a relative pronoun and make Maori syntax more Russian. And of course, predictably, there's been a backlash against this, that like a lot of Maori speakers will perceive it as a Russian syntax even today, and will consciously try to avoid using these constructions. Nevertheless, it's good to know them at least passively. Even though Maori speakers will tell you that in situations where you do find kudo as a relative word, pronoun like mut, kudum kolishtet, the word that is heard, you could also just use a participle, kolish mumut. Yodush kudum rashim den ogetul, the question which has not been solved, could also be an unsolved question. The pasha kudum ishtash kulesh, the work which must be done, or pasha kudum ishtash tunalet, the work which will be done, could also just be ishtishash pasha. And in oftentimes when it doesn't work quite as straightforwardly with the participle, Maori speakers will find other ways via paraphrases to express the things where we would use a relative pronoun, or where you can, in theory, use kudo as a relative pronoun in Maori. Like instead of saying aidemen kudum oksaje shuko, a person whose money is a lot is called rich, we could say kun oksaje shuko tudum poyan malet. Like this is like as a very old-fashioned sounding construction, works in English too. He who has a lot of money, him they call rich, or so. It's like, and let he who is without sin cast the first stone. If not, sort of, not forget I said that. Or yeah. So sometimes it works with participle construction, or if we say tida orash de knigavlak kudum ludash ugishkul. In this pile are books which one doesn't need to read. We can now here use the adjective or derivation or suffix se and have tida orase knigavlak. Like of this pile of books, one doesn't have to read. So, and then about local clauses and other similar clauses, as is the case in English, all the various question marks that words that we have in Maori can also be used in subordinate clauses where they are not interrogative. Like, tell me how you're living, or so. Tell me how this works also, where it is not a direct question word. All of this stuff also works in Maori. Kuze ila tuge chia, kuze chia tuge ila. Dress, one dresses as one lives, and like one lives, literally more like, and as one lives, one dresses. Or yeah. Tudu Kechim Kunam Marije Sargich Pertun, the day on which her husband returned from war, Vera, like Auntie Vera, can remember it today well. But also in a lot of these sentences, the Maori native speakers we work with say that, like, yeah, you can say that, but it's not really stylistically optimal. Why couldn't you manage to say it some other way with relative, with participles or whatever? Okay, word and word usage. We are in this chapter, we have a look at semen. Indirect permic borrowing in Maori, it came to Maori through Chuvash, has a bunch of different, easily delimited functions that we should look at. The first that we had was like, as, doing something, treating somebody as a guest, seeing somebody as a guest, treating somebody as an enemy of a people, doing something as the saying goes, or as is said. Straightforward enough. It can be according to, well, this is related to it, according to, in accordance with something, like in accordance to, like as a measure, in accordance with your strength, as you can manage it, in accordance to your intellect, your ability, you can do it. Or if we have here a perfectionist doing everything the way it was thought, the way it was planned, in accordance with the plan. Or this, the third one here, Kenntnisnehmen, and this is very commonly used, as one can. I will help you as best I can to the best of my abilities. So to the best of one's ability, that's pretty much always Kenntnisnehmen. It can be as in a temporal sense, like in like following along the passage of time. Jab Ertnisnehmen, as time goes by, Chalana Chal Mondatesh, all bad will be forgotten. Parem Mesemen, as one gets better, so Verruk is getting better, or merry mood returned. It can be in the manner of blah, 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 where it optionally can also take a possessive suffix to show like in the manner of a person marked with pronominal subject. Like this problem can be solved in different ways, Semenet ile is like live your own way, like as you want it, in your own manner. Here with a possessive suffix of the second person singular. Or I could say my semenem ishtem tui semenet. I'll do it my way, you do it your way. In theory, you could also say shke semen, my own way, but yeah, because shke as we saw in a few weeks ago as a reflexive pronoun in the nominative, it doesn't take any person marking. But yeah, so here it is just the possessive suffix is like doing it my way, doing it you doing it your way. Finally, we also have a meaning now obligatorily with the possessive suffix, doing something to oneself in like quietly in one's mind. Semenem shonishim, I thought to myself. Student lag shinchat semenisht examenlan materialem ushestarat. So the students are sitting quietly, they are preparing the material for the exam to themselves in their minds quietly. Yeah. Second point that we have is the difference between kocho. So we have kocho ertische, meaning last in the sense of previous, and tolshash, shushash, next. All of these are participles. Kocho, like the stayed, the remained, the one that is stayed behind us. Ertische, from ertash, to pass by, the past. Tolshash, future necessitive participle of tulash, to come. Shushash, from shuash, to arrive. So you can use these in combination with all units of times: last week, past week, next week, coming week. And as in English, it is possible to express this in different ways: last, previous, next, coming. In Mari too, you can have kocho ertische as two versions, or tolshash, shushash. Looking at the corpus, at the frequency, we can see that kocho is more common than ertische, and shushash is more common than tolshash. If I had to say something about the difference in usage when you would use the one and the other, like with very little empirical data at this point, my feeling is that kocho and shushash are the neutral ones when we're talking about like this, the temporal progression of things. So last week I ate at that restaurant, and next week I'm going to eat at that restaurant or whatnot. Whereas as ertische and tolshash have a more like poetical sense, like have a more like with more pathos, or expressing the passage of something and that something is looming in front of us. So in the year that has gone by, like on New Year's Eve or on New Year's Day, if you're reminiscing about what happened last year or something like that. Or if you're talking about the fall that is coming, but not in a boring planning way, but in a way that like you're in the middle of a pandemic and you are expecting things to get worse in autumn again, purely hypothetical situation, then you might be more inclined to use tolshash. This is just my feeling, really. Just don't take my word for it. If you, this is a subject you can research on your own and maybe come up with better answers eventually. So the text in this chapter pertains to the Mari Summer School, a great and essential institution which has had hard times in the current pandemic. Spoiler. but which has in the past been a great experience for me and my students. And well, I'm not going to say much more about it in the video now, because if you want to know more about it, you can read the text. And also the news clip this week pertains again to the Maury Summer School in a year when I and my students were not there. But so we're giving other students a chance to talk about their experiences. The song of the week this week is again a birthday song, this time a modern one with a modern recording by Tatiana Kibayeva. And well, it is a birthday again, even though mine has passed. It is the birthday of our Maury Learning Group with which we are creating this resource, because we've been at it for a year at this point. So with that all being said, see you next week at the revision lesson.